Myself and Cork native Fintan O'Toole of the 42.ie have decided to do a best Cork 15 from 1995 to 2019, so a 25 year span. First thing I noticed actually, Fintan, when I was going through it, in the last 25 years, in only 9 seasons have Cork players won All Stars. So it's been such an up and down for a team that's, the second most All Irelands in the history of the GAA, in hurling anyway. It's fairly up and down sort of a run the last 25 years.
Yeah, I'd say those All Stars are kind of concentrated, are they, in the say 03, 06 period, and then probably more recently they've got one, I think, each of the last 3 seasons. But yeah, I think that was it Ben O'Connor 08 kind of stands out, and then there was a couple in 13, and then that was pretty much it. Probably reflective of that. Some years, say they got to All Ireland semi-finals and that, but it kind of ended very badly for them. There was a good couple of years I kind of know that they would have kind of lost. I think there was maybe 3 in about 4 or 5 years they were losing games to Galway, kind of got knocked out of the championship. Probably ties in as well to the general narrative that there's just been a lot of disruption, whether it's kind of player turnover, manager turnover, and then without going down the road of all the kind of strife that was off the pitch in the winters. But I think you can now kind of see, with the benefit of the time, it did have a major impact in their ability to kind of get going again come summertime, and that while the issues were maybe sorted in various cases by kind of about February or March, you were playing catch up then to the rest of the counties. And especially at a time when I think Kilkenny and Tip were taking it to a whole new level. It's probably leveled off a little bit over the last couple of years. There's kind of more contenders. But I think Cork, like a lot of counties, were kind of playing catch up to the two of them for a period there.
When you were a young lad, and I suppose you would have been hitting your teenage years in the middle of the 90s and that, did you, like, if I look at the run of All Stars, you had you had a lot in 1990, obviously All Ireland winners, 3 in 1991, 3 in 1992, a couple in 93, and then you have to go to 1999 for the next set of All Stars. So from your point of view, was the 90s a tough period as a young man trying to watch Cork?
Yeah, well, you just didn't get to see them much, did you? I mean, like, it was just, similar to the way, I suppose we kind of knew no different in the sense that it was all on the day, wasn't it? It was all first round, it was all knockout championship, and then there was days like, say, 95, the last minute goal from Ollie Baker. That was it for the year, and you kind of knew no different. Like the backdoor system that came in 97 only kind of gave the second chance to Munster finalists, and it's kind of why I suppose it kind of started to turn. Then I was kind of heading into secondary school in 98. They won the league. Then 99 they win the All Ireland, and then you had a great run really. Okay, 02, there was obviously the off-season problems, and it was a very bad day. Was it 02 against Galway and Thurles? I think they got heavily beaten and lost the qualifier there then. But then you had a brilliant run then, like, where you were basically, along with Kilkenny, kind of dominating from that period, and you had 4 All-Ireland appearances in a row from 03 to 06. So probably kind of reflective of the way hurling went, that you had the kind of breakthrough counties of the 90s, and then in turn kind of Cody, Nicky English and Jimmy Barry Murphy all kind of started to have their say. In particular, Cody then became kind of the dominant figure.
We'll start off in the goals, because you've actually got 3 sort of eras all clashing together in this 25 years. Gerard Cunningham, who of course it was 1986, I think he was hurler of the year, but of course we're going from 1995 on. So we're talking the last couple of years of Gerard Cunningham, Donlow Cusack then for many years, and then Anthony Nash pretty much since 2011-12, that sort of era. So who are you going to go with?
I kind of went for Donlow Cusack. The kind of battle in my mind came down between him and Nash, simply because of the time span that you selected. So like Cunningham just didn't probably get much chances kind of from 1995 on. Would have won a league in 98, but then kind of Cusack kind of came along in 99. I think he was kind of reflective of a band of goalkeepers, like you look at Chris O'Connor's great book, like, they're kind of well documented there with what kind of Brendan Cummins, Damien Fitzhenry, David Fitzgerald were doing. I think Cusack was kind of central to that and kind of revamping the game. Nash, for a guy who had to kind of bide his time for so long, I think he's had quite an impact, considering that he only kind of made his breakthrough in a playing sense in his kind of late 20s. He'd been on the panel for a good while. Winning the couple of All Stars that he did, his shot stopping, adding the kind of penalty goal scoring capacity. But it was for me it was Cusack. I just thought he was just central to everything Cork were doing. I think his puck outs, when you watch back some of the old TG Cahir GA goal games that have gone on at the moment, Like I saw Cunningham was actually interviewed recently about the 1990 final, and when he now looks back on it, he wonders why he didn't do more short puckouts against the wind instead of lamping the ball down on top of the goal at half back line. But that just wasn't the done thing then. You'd have heard all about it from management if you'd done it. So I think Cusack was kind of central to that. And one of the ones that sticks out for me was the 06 semi-final when he brought down that ball from Ken McGrath. Probably the bravery to bring it down, because it could have gone badly wrong when he kind of put the hurley up, and that it could have kind of gone down centrally, but that he got up and managed to flick it away, and the fine whistle sounded soon after. And that was Waterford kind of at their peak, Cork at their peak. That was an absolutely brilliant game. So yeah, I went for Cusack and goal.
How much do you think of what Anthony Nash does in terms of it's probably a bit lazy to call it quarterbacking, but from the goals whereby he's looking up and he's trying to find the man, even whether it's in play, he's obviously taking the ball back off a defender and he's looking for somebody, or else from his puck outs. How much of that do you think stems from the influence of Donal Logue?
I think it's very interconnected, and also you could argue that it's interconnected with Cunningham as well. I mean, Cunningham was involved in the Cork management in the mid-noughties when Nash was making his breakthrough and Cusack was number one. You would have had Paul Morrissey, would have been quite a good goalkeeper for Newton Chandram, was kind of involved for a while. And then the trio really were Cusack, Martin Coleman and Anthony Nash. And it would have been kind of said, around Cork at the time, with the performances that Nash and Coleman were putting in at club level, that, Cork were really well served with their backup keepers. And Coleman and Nash would have both been playing Fitzgibbon for, Coleman with CIT, Nash with UCC. And you could see, the quality of training that we're getting. And I think Cusack has referred to this, that I presume this goes for every kind of goalkeeper. You need a number two to be kind of pushing you and to be kind of helping you maintain that standards and kind of driving you on. So I think there's a kind of a continuation there and a kind of maintenance of their style of play that it's kind of very obvious to see the kind of influences in his career and in his play.
The one thing I'd say for Nash here is he has just as many All-Stars as Cusack, so they've two each, and he probably has a couple of more years. I know that Collins is probably going to push him hard from here on in, but also if Cork had to win that All-Ireland in 2013, Anthony Nash possibly would be the story, and he on his own has led to a rule change. Well, Stephen O'Keefe, I suppose, charging down one of his penalties, but he's actually left a huge mark on hurling in the last kind of 7 or 8 years of being on the team.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably might have been, if it had gone differently for Cork that year, he might have been too far off hurler of the year, would he? As a goalkeeper in 13? I mean, this is obviously one of those kind of sliding doors moment questions, but I mean, I think his input, if the 2013 finals, especially the second one, are kind of regarded so highly in the GAA and recalled so fondly by neutrals, and there's so many brilliant moments, obviously Clare supplied a lot of them, but Nash is, I suppose, the kind of the theatre and the drama around it of him coming up fields and kind of backing it up by scoring goals in both games was kind of central to that. So I mean, it's a tight call. I mean, it's not an obvious one that I would say maybe in other counties, as regards the goalkeeper position. But I'm going to go for Cusack.
Okay, so the full back line then, you've gone for Wayne Sherlock, Dermot the Rock O'Sullivan and Brian Murphy. I think Brian Murphy is a complete lock altogether. I mean, it's hard to think of anyone who's ever gotten too much joy off him over the course of his career. Dermot the Rock O'Sullivan, there's probably not really. I think Owen Cadigan, if he had to stay playing full back for 10 years, might be able to push him here, but obviously jumping over and back between football means he didn't play as many games as he might. Fergal Ryan might be up for consideration. John Brown, Pat Mulcahy, Shane O'Neill, I think is probably even a small bit hard done by. Maybe Wayne Sherlock could move to the wing. What was your thinking behind these three, Sherlock, The Rock and Brian Murphy?
Well, Sherlock, first of all, his career kind of ended a little bit earlier than maybe people would have thought it should have. He had a bad injury, but I just thought he was absolutely fantastic to watch. He was such a good hurler, so calm, so composed, kind of swept around, mopped up a lot of possession. And I suppose again, maybe at that time, Blackrock were really, really strong in the Cork County Championship. So maybe some of the kind of players I'm picking, you're kind of informed from, you're kind of watching them star in county finals around then a lot as well, But I mean, I just thought he was brilliant. He kind of came along from that successful 21 team. I think Sullivan, he's 3 All-Stars. I don't think there's much disputing there. Him at full back, I think he kind of anchored Cork's challenge for a long time. Probably kind of a real kind of a standout character as well in terms of kind of, an emblem of that Cork team, wasn't he? The kind of the 03-06 side, with his kind of defensive performances. And Brian Murphy then, he probably started out around the time, Cork kind of last couple of All Ireland successes. And like he was a young hurler of the year, I think. Was he 04, 05? He put in a lot of service then, in that, like, when the Cork got to the All Ireland final in 13, he was kind of, himself and Tom Kenny were the two kind of last survivors from that previous success. And then he came back again in 15, but it kind of didn't obviously kind of end very well for them. There was a couple of other contenders, I thought. I mean, Fergal Ryan had a very good year in 99, would have won an All-Star. John Brown would have had a bit of success as well with Cork at cornerback. And the other two big cornerbacks then, Pat Mulcahy would have been an All-Star in 05, probably similar to what I was saying kind of about Sherlock. Would have been kind of very well-regarded player in Cork for his club exploits, but probably better known as a centre-back with his club. And then Shane O'Neill was the big one that I did consider. I mean, I just kind of remember watching him underage. He would have been kind of a halfback with the Cork underage teams and with his club. But like, was just absolutely fantastic. And then kind of made a real quick step up onto the Cork side. I mean, do you know the 08 game where Canning got the 2-12 against Cork? I think there was a great line from Loughnane afterwards, talking basically when he saw Shane O'Neill coming out with the ball and he was snorting like a bull. He said, "I knew we were in trouble." Basically, that the 14 men were starting to take over, and that he thought this guy was simply emblematic of that kind of passion and the drive and the will to win. I think his career probably suffered a little bit, maybe the way Cork were going, and also I suppose a lot of people's eyes, he's probably nationally, isn't he, just remembered for the Shane O'Donnell 2013 thing, which is a bit unfair in the sense of reducing his career down to that.
Well, as much as anything else, the fact that here was a guy who was unbelievable cornerback, and he's been thrown in fullback, an alien position, a problem position, and he's the one who stepped up to the plate to take over there. So I think that's unbelievably unfair in him. Like, I'd be pushing hard to have him in this team.
Yeah, I think maybe one of those goals, I think maybe he did maybe get caught for his positioning, but I think if you watch back that, a lot of people view it as like, Shane of Clare scored 3-3 from play off Shane of Cork. But Cork had a lot of problems kind of all over the field in that first half. I think there was one of them, Pat Donlan, kind of did he solo the ball about 70 yards through the centre of the defence before offloading it to O'Donnell. And then I suppose O'Neill's Cork career as well probably ended with the kind of the player cull that Kieran Kingston did before the start of the 16 championship, with a big shift in direction towards the younger players. So I suppose like a lot of GA players, he didn't really get the kind of to bow out the kind of way he wanted. But so it was kind of a little bit kind of torn between them. But I still think over the course of a couple of All Ireland wins, and for what they did, I'm kind of going to stick with Sherlock, O'Sullivan and Murphy.
Okay. I think most Cork traditionalists or fans from the last 15 or 20 years will be happy enough with your half back line. So you name them out and I'll see if I can pick any holes.
Yeah, so I've gone for basically the trio that'll be I suppose I think they were the kind of launch pad, really, in a lot of ways, of the kind of strength of that Cork team. So John Gardner 5, Ronan Kern 6, and Sean O'Halpine 7. So I suppose O'Halpine came a bit before the other two part of the team in 99. Kern would have been kind of talked about and known as a kind of a very promising centre back, but probably the fact that Brian Corkman was kind of in situ initially probably kind of stalled his progress a bit. But I think the two of them are absolute locks. I don't think you can argue with it. I mean, Sean O'Halpine hurler of the year in 04. Kern got 3 All-Stars at centre back. And in lots of ways, maybe Cork haven't, they kind of set standards that have been kind of difficult for Cork to reach in those positions. They probably as well, the three of them probably get a lot of kind of, I suppose, consistency of selection. Maybe you don't see that as much, do you, in the Cork defence from 2 to 7? Like, that was probably one of Cork's strengths, that it was very easy to name their defence for a long time. Say Mulcahy came in cornerback, or Shane O'Neill came in cornerback, maybe at one stage. But a lot of those defenders were kind of cornerstones of the team. I kind of went for Gardner at number 5. I mean, I remember the 01 All-Ireland final being up at that. My father, who, as you know, is from your own county. But Cork were in the minor game that day, and I just remember all the top performers. Ger Farrher, I think, was going for maybe 3 in a row of All-Ireland minor wins. But Gardner, like, that Cork minor team was really, really good, but Gardner was absolutely outstanding at centre back. So yeah, like, I was trying to think of kind of other kind of contenders. You've probably kind of alluded to a couple of them. If you put a Cadigan or an O'Neill in cornerback, could you move O'Neill, could you move Sherlock out to wing back? Don't think he probably played there enough for Cork. It's probably too soon it's far too soon in his career, but I do think Mark Coleman has, come along very, very strong in the last couple of years, but it's a real kind of a short kind of a spell. And then after that, I mean, I was looking through it, like Cork have kind of just had a lot of different guys have played half back at different times without. Like, the thing I was thinking when I was trying to pick this team was that it probably had to be someone who kind of done it for a good few years. And, you know, that consistency of selection just hasn't really been there in the Cork defence.
Do you feel in some ways that Cork were hurt by the fact that they hung on to this half back line for so long? I mean, that they didn't well, is it a fact that they didn't have the talent to replace them, or that they held on to the glory half back line that was, you know, picking apples out of the sky for 5 or 6 years, that they just kind of let it go on for a season or two too long?
I think it's reflective of both of those. I mean, like, how many times have we talked about Cork's lack of underage success? And I mean, it wasn't even the winning All-Ireland titles. They weren't even winning Munster titles underage. They weren't getting to All-Ireland semi-finals and finals. So the players weren't coming through to the same extent. So naturally, like that in any sport, you know, if the talent isn't coming through, you're probably going to stick with the guys that are there. And the problems off the field, I don't think probably helped a lot of these players, you know, in their preparation for various kind of championship seasons. But you know, yeah, like, I suppose it's kind of the age-old sport of just trying to kind of replicate the kind of success of the past and trying to stick to that. So I suppose the other maybe kind of consideration here for the half-back line was Brian Corcoran, really, given that he hurled the year in 1999, played at number 6. So it's probably the one, sorry, just for the record, I haven't left him out of the team. But it's probably the one kind of accommodation that I did. I don't think you could leave Curran out either. And Curran achieved a lot at number 6. So yeah, obviously he's the other major figure in Cork's kind of hurling history over the last while in his half back play.
Yeah, so like, I think it's crucial that we are trying to pick lads in the positions where they played. So, but with Corcoran, you can pretty much play him anywhere. Sure, wasn't he hurler of the year, corner back? Won All Stars up
at 92. Yeah,
I remember games where he played midfield. I think even against Kieran Carey, I did a piece not so long ago, and he was wearing a number 8 jersey. Obviously, full forward. You can pretty much play him anywhere. I'd be looking at Corcoran more. I think anyone who plays in the half back line can play anywhere across the half back line. There's not that much of a difference to it. I'd be looking at, like, Sean O'Halpine was a force of nature. So hurler of the year, 3-time All-Star run. Curran, great man for winning the high ball, of course, just glorious hurler. John Gardner, very good, won an All-Star. Even that 08 game you mentioned, I remember after the Rock got sent off, he went in full back and he actually did a pretty decent job that day. So good player. Yeah. Even the 2004 Munster final was on recently. He actually struggled a bit with Dan Shanahan that day, and so did the Rock in full back. I'd be looking at putting Corcoran centre back. I was even just watching back the 1999 All-Ireland, and just like a great start against John Power. Really physical player, of course, driving out with the ball. I think Corcoran has to be centre back. I mean, he's, of all those options you have at number 6, for me it has to be Brian Corcoran. I put Ronan Curran wing back and John Gardner unlucky to miss out. Of course, who goes full forward then? We'll get to that. But yeah, that's the way I'd be going.
Yeah, so it was with that in mind. I did kind of look at it then, who would you put in? But yeah, that's why I kind of stuck with Curran 6. And then obviously, as you'll see later in the team, Corcoran further up the team. But that is probably the one kind of area of debate. And it was probably a thing that Cork were really well served. You know, you kind of touched on it there with centre backs. They had Corcoran. He then retired for the first time. Curran came in, took over. And then when Corcoran came back, they would accommodate him further up the pitch. And they kind of had that centre back slot sorted for a long time. And it's probably kind of shows one of the issues for the team over the last couple of years. Like, say, I'm going here with Rock O'Sullivan 3 and Ronan Curran 6. You could. You know, it was an easy decision for Cork management teams to pick your 3 and 6 for a long time, but that hasn't been the case for the last couple of years.
Do you think actually that in the last few years, your fascination in Cork with trying to find a number 6 and someone to replace Ronan Curran and Brian Corcoran is a bit like Tip during the noughties, whereby there was always this concern, there's no one to win the ball in the half forward line, you know, there's no Declan Ryan anymore. Do you think that... Yeah. Depending on how you play, you can actually get around it. Just play a different sort of a way, and like Tipperary, just going long ball constantly didn't suit the type of forwards they had. They had to find a different way to play to suit what they had. Do you think with Cork there might be something to that too? You just need to stop, you know, getting so caught up on a number 6.
Yeah, and it probably is maybe linked to, isn't it, harking back for the past. You know, I mean, we're all at the moment a lot of nostalgia going around in kind of sports coverage, so there is that kind of maybe kind of sense of it. Then I suppose at times then certain options showed up. You know, like I'm thinking maybe this is more the kind of full back line, but he had played centre back like Owen Cadigan at times. But then obviously he was kind of with footballers for other years. Colm Spillane was a guy that was really highly rated. He then obviously had a really good year. Was it 17 or 18, I think, at cornerback? But then he would have actually originally been brought on by Jimmy Barry Murphy, but did his cruciate. He then has come back into the frame, but then he missed the whole of last year with a back injury. So certain guys that they maybe kind of earmarked or maybe thought would kind of make the step up, it kind of hasn't quite possibly worked out. But yeah, that is, I suppose, what you're getting at is kind of cutting your cloth to measure and kind of finding a system that kind of suits your players, and that you can kind of move around then accordingly.
So Mark Landers and Mickey O'Connell have been snubbed at midfield. Dara Fitzgibbon has been snubbed.
Yeah, so I was looking at this. I suppose you're looking at it in terms of the All-Ireland wins. So your Landers 99 was involved, obviously O'Connell around then, and O'Connell would have played in the O3 final as well. Definitely over the last couple of years, Dara Fitzgibbon has been absolutely superb. And I think if we're making, a combination selection in 2030 or whatever, I do think he's primed of a really, really good and long, successful Cork career. Daniel Carney was the other one I thought. He's had a couple of really good years, but I think ultimately it is the Tom and Jerry show. Tom Kenny, he started off as kind of wing back, but then he kind of moved very quickly into midfield. It's one of my favourite goals from a Cork supporting point of view, the 04 semi-final replay, when he did that run down the middle against Wexford, and then without catching the ball, kind of in one fluid motion into Hill 16. And then Jerry O'Connor, he had 3 All-Stars, would have been hurler of the year in 05. And again, going back to, I suppose, a lot of the hurling you'd be watching her, and then he was not only doing it for Cork, but he was so essential to Newtown Chandrum becoming one of the strongest club sides in the country there for a while. So I'd be quite happy with that as a partnership. Waiting for you to pick holes in it now.
Yeah, well, I think Mark Landers, he'll probably feel a little bit hard done by. An outside shout for Bill Cooper, because when Cork around 13, 14, that sort of an era, well, sorry, obviously not 13, but from 14 on for a few years, Cork were not a particularly good team, and he was, I think, arguably, despite not having the talents of Lahan, Horgan, all these players, he was probably more important than the rest, and even in terms of leadership, led very, very well. Whereas a lot of these players we're naming, they were on a winning team.
Yeah, that's true, and that's a good point about the leadership aspect. And a lot of Cork players allude to it, and management very vocally allude to it. Whether it was John Myler or Kieran Kingston, and Jim Barry Murphy, they all speak very favourably of Cooper's leadership, and he's probably done very well in the sense that I'm pretty sure he didn't play minor. Not sure about under 21. He definitely played Cork intermediate, and then he would have kind of come through a bit with CIT Fitzgibbon and his club Yall. But he didn't have he wasn't earmarked. He wasn't one of these guys at 14, 15 you were saying that guy's definitely going to play senior. But in many years, I think his probably influence has kind of grown as in over the last couple of years, and he's kind of dovetailed really well with Fitzgibbon. So yeah, probably a few more contenders here for midfield, but yeah, still going to stick with Kenny and O'Connor.
Was Mark Landers' line, Liam McCarthy, we missed you a lot?
What was it? Well, welcome back to Leeside.
Okay.
We have missed you in 99, yeah. He come on in he captained the McKillop teams that won the counties, and then he came into the frame then for Cork captain then.
Okay, let's move on to the half-forward line. There's a couple of guys, well, there's one lad for sure. I mean, you couldn't leave Niall McCarthy out, even though he kind of split the room at times, in that the final ball mightn't go always where you wanted, but some meant to win a ball in the first place.
Yeah, I think actually this is probably linked back to your earlier point about Cork people hankering after a run in Kern. I think the amount of people, you got to have a tip saying they don't have a ball in half forward line. That's one of the biggest charges leveled at Cork. And the people saying if only we had Niall McCarthy now. Cork fans regularly over the last couple of seasons when they haven't got to the All-Ireland. So yeah, he was the definite for me centre forward. I think his point, I saw a clip of it recently, there's Jay been kind of tweeting out scores from the 04 final, kind of when he was kind of almost falling on the Cusack stand side and managed to put it over,
That was a glorious score. I mean, very few players could do that. Can I also say his helmet is absolutely iconic, the white and green. The fact that it didn't have the clasps down there at all. And then also, am I remembering correctly, did he have sponsorship either on his hurley or his boots and get into a bit of trouble around that era?
Yeah, I think it was Wexford 03. It was him, and I could be wrong, but I think it might be Kieran Murphy. It was actually a deal with Corona, as far as I remember. Or was it Paddy? There was a Corona deal and there was a Paddy Power deal.
Both of those ring a bell. Both of those definitely ring a bell. But
was there a Paddy Power was one on the boots and one on the hurley or something like that? It was around that time, obviously, when the GA and GPA matters were kind of fairly fractious. yeah, that rings a bell, all right. But like McCarthy's kind of force of nature and like his influence in games. I mean, like one of my strongest memories of him actually was the role he had in his club winning the county senior title, coming from absolutely nowhere. They've been close to relegation the year before in 2011. 2011 is when they won it, Carrie-Toole, and his performance in the final. I mean, like I remember him basically blocking it down with his helmet at one stage. He lost early and he dived to block down a ball on the sideline, scoring points. And I think that kind of summed him up in the way he was at his best for Cork. Just absolutely brilliant guy. So I put him in at centre forward on this thing.
You've gone for Ben O'Connor and Seamus Hannity as the other two half forwards either side of Niall McCarthy. You could make a case that the two of those could be in the full forward line as well if you were looking to get Brian Corcoran out of there.
Yeah, you could, but I think Ben was so kind of flexible that I think he could slide in anywhere, and he did play in various different positions.
Arguably, if Cork had to beat Kilkenny in 2008, after the performance he'd had against Galway in that game you mentioned earlier, the one where Canning scored 2-12 or whatever it was, I think Ben O'Connor was in line for Hurler of the Year that year.
Yeah, and like he did get an All-Star, and like I think going back to our conversation about Cork All-Stars and the lack of them in the noughties, it kind of stood out for me, his performances in a way to kind of get that one. And just, I suppose, the kind of chemistry he had on the pitch with Jerry and their skill levels, and they were just so dominant that decade between, again, I'm kind of repeating myself a bit, like between what they were doing for Cork and what they were doing for Newtown Chandram, a county, provincial and club. It's just absolutely fantastic to watch. Scored a great goal, a couple of great big goals in All-Ireland finals as well. He got one towards the end of the 06 final, and then I'm pretty sure he got the only goal, didn't he, in the 05 final for Cork against Galway. Just absolutely gifted. I think Hannity then as well, I think he deserves to get in. I realise that it's becoming apparent that this is a very kind of 03 to 06 heavy selection, but I think he's one of the current ones in the sense that his breakthrough in 13, and I think he's backed it up over the last couple of years since he became captain. So, he won that All-Star in the first year, but I think, he's a good, to use that phrase, body of work kind of behind him now. Scores some really, really big scores, like the goal he got a couple of years ago in the Munster final against Clare. Like, yeah, got a lot of big goals for Cork, and then kind of taken to the captaincy role. So I'd put him in at half forward. And that's probably the other thing as well about Cork, that it's kind of said now that he is the only ball winner they have in the half forward line. And, in this debate, when they're kind of looking at the failings of the side, it's kind of a lot of the kind of pressure and kind of onus is on him to deliver in that department.
I think kind of said it all, that in the 2018 All-Ireland semi-final against Limerick, when it went to extra time and he was absolutely crippled, they brought him back on again. He's such a leader. 2013 All-Ireland, himself and Conor Ryan, who was centre-back for Clare that day, probably the two of them gave man of the match displays on each other. Yeah, he's just a ball winner and a goal scorer. Like it goes without saying that Patrick Horgan and Joe Dean are going to be your corner forwards, and we probably don't have to wax too lyrical. Everyone knows why. I mean, Joe Dean was just he was just brilliant, and obviously as a Tipperary supporter, you were detesting him, even though you were kind of wishing he was in your jersey. I mean, he was so good, and the iconic yellow helmet. Patrick Horgan, arguably up there with Cork's best ever players. But just before we wax too lyrical on them, I think Timmy McCarthy has to be in this team.
Right.
And I'll tell you why. I was watching back the 1999 final there, as I was saying a little earlier. 2 of the first 3 points came from him. His ability to win ball, like 2005 final against Galway, he's the guy stepping up, getting a couple of points as well. I think even if he didn't wear that space helmet, and even again the 1999 final, he had one sock up to his knee and the other sock down by the ankle. I think a lot of it is perception. He didn't look slick, and I think that compromised a lot of what he did, because yeah, he had the odd wide in the same way that Niall McCarthy would, and people would probably think of them as brothers because they're just a bit ungainly looking at times. But I think his delivery, and comes back to like what he delivered for the team, and it comes back to the whole, what is the output of your half forward line? Can they win their own ball? He actually could, and without him, I don't know if the likes of Ben O'Connor and co could actually have done as much as they did.
Yeah, I definitely did consider him, but like just on your kind of thing about perception and criticism and all that, I wonder, as part of it, the fact the way hurling was kind of viewed then or analysed, that all 6 forwards had to be scorers, and that's the way it was through that kind of narrow kind of frame and prism. I do think there's more of an appreciation now for the workhorses, to use that phrase, of the kind of ball winners. I mean, you look at, I would say, someone like Dan McCormick is kind of valued in the Galway team or in the Tipperary team. And you know how, say, Seamus Callan's tracking back is kind of praised as much now. I just think maybe the way we're analysing hurling is different to the way it was viewed in the noughties. And I think a lot of maybe supporters, like, he was fairly a maligned figure at times with the Cork fans. I mean, I remember 2004, he was kind of the source of a lot of criticism when they lost to Waterford. And then the next day down against Tipperary and Killarney, he came off the bench, scored the goal, and everyone's gone mad, loving him again, like, which kind of shows, not for the first time, the fickle nature of supporters on a championship day. But yeah, I definitely did consider him. And the other one I kind of considered him, that I presume if you're putting him there, you're moving Harnedy then into full forward, right?
Correct and right.
Right. Yeah, the other one that I considered, so I suppose, yeah, the two locks for me were Horgan and Dean. I think Dean was just superb in terms of maybe showing that a smaller guy could kind of do it. You know, that it wasn't just the big full forward was able to star. Was kind of central to the 09 and kind of 03 and 04 teams. And one of his best performances that I remember, as a familiar man on our game, Michael Verney wrote recently, I think, about his favourite game being the Offaly Cork 2000 semi-final in the Independent. But the first half performance Dean gave that day was absolutely unbelievable, and Kevin Keenan. Now then the tables are reversed after that, but I remember just how good he was in that game, and he got an All-Star that year. And then I think Horgan over the last couple of years, I think there's no question for his place in this, and he seems to kind of got better and better and kind of taken on the attacking leadership role. So yeah, I put both of them in, obviously, and then I put Corcoran then in full forward for kind of what he did when he came back to the team and the impact that he had in that kind of 04 to 06 spell. I'll throw another couple of names at you. Well, it was only one season, but Sepanta's impact in 03 for only one season was pretty special. Shawnee McGrath as well, kind of in an earlier time. I mean, I remember his debut being at that. I checked it up. It was 97. And he had the shortest hurley. I think it was only a size 30 or 31. And at that time, you know, Clare were kind of such a physically imposing size. And it was felt that was the way you had to play hurling. That was the way the forwards had to be. And then this really, really small guy comes along. And like, he got 5 points from playing that game. And like, he was still magic as well in that 99 final you referred to. And the other one, I'm trying to think. Yeah, well, I suppose kind of more current, but Connolly Ham in flashes has looked good in the full forward line. And I think Alan Cadigan, you know, if he got a proper run and if he kind of avoided injuries, you know, I mean, like, he's definitely shown the kind of massive potential that is there. But look, none of them I don't think are going to dislodge Horgan and Dean from the corner forward positions.
No, definitely not. But Alan Cadigan is still only 26. If he could stay fit for 2 or 3 seasons and Cork could get to the stage where they're regularly in All-Ireland finals and winning them, like, he's more or less unstoppable. Yeah, Shawnee McGrath, again, I keep mentioning the 99 final because I just watched it. Like, he was as thin as a hern. He was an absolute whippet, but he was definitely hard to keep into. Conor Lahan, 27 years of age, about to turn 28. Probably as much talent as any Cork players had in the last 30 years, but for whatever reason, maybe it's a symptom of Cork themselves, can't really put a couple of seasons together, or can be, like, even 2018, I think he was unreal for half the season, picked up a bit of an ankle injury and never quite got back to the same level as well. Like, talent-wise, he's probably better than a couple of the lads who are actually in this team.
Yeah, it's just trying to unlock that. Like, the game sounded for me was a couple of years ago, the 17 match against Tipperary, when Tipper were All-Ireland champions. He got man of the match that game in Semple Stadium, and he was outstanding. But it's probably trying to get consistency of performance from, you know, half to half, from game to game, season to season has been the issue, and probably maybe trying to figure out for definite what his position is, you know, like where in the 6 you would play him. Yeah, definitely probably kind of a source of frustration at times, you know, because we kind of all know the ability was there, but times probably still on his side, and the same with Cadigan, to kind of get into this conversation. One other guy that I tried to wouldn't make it, but kind of a pre-Nell McCarthy, was the role that Fergal McCormack had in that kind of 2000 kind of, and then in the 99 team. Like, he was like a massive ball winner and the kind of guy that made things happen. And that's why you had, as you alluded to, the kind of diminutive Shawnee McGrath and Joe Dean able to kind of do magic inside when you had someone like that in the half forward.
Yeah, McCormack had some paw on him, to be fair. Pebbles O'Sullivan, Dermot the Rock O'Sullivan's brother, without injury, or if he had to not get that horrible leg injury, do you think he had the talent to definitely be able to deliver more? And like, I don't think it's necessarily his fault that he didn't.
Yeah, like, I just remember seeing him underage and thinking, this guy is absolutely gifted. I mean, he was the same age as Horgan. You know, actually underage, he actually was played as a centre back. Like, he played centre back for Cork Miners, and he was centre back and captain of Middleton team to win a Harty Cup. I think he might have played there as well in under 21. But then when he kind of came into the Cork senior side, he was kind of inside corner forward. I kind of would have thought at the time him and Horgan are really going to kind of dominate for ages. But I do think that leg injury did have a serious impact on him. I mean, he's still playing really good club hurling. Like, he's after winning 3 counties over the last couple of years, and some of the kind of touches he has and the points he scores and the goals. But he got the goal. Probably one of his best moments was he got the goal to kind of seal the Munster final win in 14. That would have been the last game in the old Cork XV. So it's probably kind of a special personal moment for him. But yeah, just never really probably got to the stage. And I think the leg injury had a big impact to kind of maybe deliver to the extent that people maybe would have envisaged when he was kind of growing up.
So there's no way I can convince you to throw Brian Corcoran centre back, Ronan Curran wing back, Seamus Harnedy full forward, and Timmy McCarthy wing forward. I think you've got the perfect team, nice blend then, and Cork could actually win All Ireland again.
Well, I don't think it's too imbalanced with the way I've picked it with Gardner 5, Curran 6. I still think I'd put Gardner in there. I don't think it was actually probably that difficult a team to pick, in the sense that I don't know how many of the counties you've done, like, but as in, like, some of them I'd say are, I'd say trying to do a Dublin football one now would be, a bit of a head scratcher, or Kerry or that, but probably kind of reflective of the way Cork fortunes have gone. That I actually, looking at the Cork Waterford game that was on the other day on TG4, I kind of realised that like 13 of the side that I was picking were playing that game, and then I just was throwing in Harnedy and Horgan, all the modern players. But a couple of the current players we mentioned, like Coleman, Fitzgibbon, Cadigan, maybe they're kind of still in the early stages of their careers. But yeah, kind of a consensus there. If we both agree on 14 of the personnel, that's not too bad.
Yeah, I actually want Shane O'Neill in there for Wayne Sherlock, but not by much, and that's no slight on Sherlock.
Okay.
But
13 out of 15 isn't bad, so
it's not bad. So I'll just run through your team one more time. So Donald Cusack, Wayne Sherlock, Diarmuid the Rock O'Sullivan, Brian Murphy, John Gardner, Ronan Curran, Sean O'Halpine, Tom Kenny and Jerry O'Connor, Ben O'Connor, Niall McCarthy, Seamus Harnedy, Patrick Horgan, Brian Corcoran, and Joe Dean. Not bad.
That's it.